The mansion doors closed behind her with a soft click. The blonde maid thought no one noticed her leaving early again, but someone did. From the shadows of his bulletproof SUV, the Mafia boss watched her hurry down the street, shoulders tense, uniform still damp from hours of cleaning marble floors. She didn't take the bus. She didn't call a ride. She walked. Fast. Almost like she was running from something. And that's when he made a decision he never made before. He followed her. Street after street. Block after block. Through alleys where even his men refused to walk alone. Something was wrong. He could feel it. She finally turned into a rundown neighborhood. The kind of place where broken windows were normal and gunshots were part of the soundtrack. He parked far behind, stepped out quietly, and followed her into a crumbling building. What he saw inside hit him harder than any bullet ever could. No danger, no secret lover, no betrayal. Just a tiny room, a thin mattress on the floor, a little boy coughing so hard it echoed through the hallway, and that young maid, the same one who always smiled at work, ripping open a paper bag with shaking hands to feed him the leftovers she had secretly saved from the mansion. She whispered, "Mommy, sorry it isn't much today. I'll bring more tomorrow." The Mafia boss froze. A lump rose in his throat. He had expected trouble. He had expected lies. He never expected this. Stay with me until the end. Because what this Mafia boss chooses to do next doesn't just change her life. It changes his entire empire. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. Vincent Marcelli ran his empire like a machine. Every detail mattered. Every person had their place. Every movement was calculated. He built his fortune on precision, fear, and knowing exactly what everyone around him was thinking before they thought it themselves. At 42, he commanded respect from men twice his size and twice his experience. His tailored suits never had a wrinkle. His voice never rose above a whisper. His eyes missed nothing. The mansion he called home stretched across 8 acres of perfectly manicured grounds. Marble imported from Italy. Paintings worth more than most people's houses. Security systems that could detect a heartbeat from 3 blocks away. Everything in his world was expensive, controlled, and absolutely perfect. Everything except the questions that had been eating at him for the past 3 weeks. Elena Volkov had worked in his household for almost 2 years. 24 years old, blonde hair always pulled back in a neat bun. Blue eyes that somehow managed to stay bright even during the longest shifts. She cleaned with the kind of attention to detail that impressed even him. Never missed a spot. Never broke anything. Never asked for time off. Until recently. 3 weeks ago, she started leaving early. Not by much. Maybe 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there. But Vincent noticed everything. And this felt different. She would glance at the clock repeatedly during her final hour. Her hands would shake slightly when she folded the last towel. She would practically sprint toward the door the moment her shift ended. His head of security, Marco, had run a basic check on her when she first applied for the position. Clean background, no criminal record, no suspicious associations. Just a young woman who needed work and had excellent references from her previous employer. But people changed. Loyalties shifted. Money had a way of making even the most honest person consider impossible things. Vincent had seen it happen before. The accountant who skimmed from the books. The driver who sold information to rivals. The cook who tried to poison his food. Each betrayal taught him the same lesson. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. So when Elena's behavior started changing, his instincts kicked in. He instructed Marco to keep an eye on her. Nothing invasive, just observe. Watch for patterns. Look for anything unusual. Marco reported back after a week. She leaves on time every day now, boss. Walks to the bus stop. Takes the number 7 downtown. Gets off at 5th and Morrison. That's where I lose her. 5th and Morrison. Vincent knew the area. Mixed neighborhood. Not dangerous, but not safe either. Working families trying to make ends meet. Small apartments, corner stores with bulletproof glass. Any idea where she goes from there? Could be anywhere within a 6-block radius. You want me to follow her closer? Vincent had considered it, but something held him back. Maybe it was the way she always said good morning with genuine warmth. Maybe it was how she never flinched when his associates came to the house for meetings. Maybe it was the fact that in 2 years, she had never once asked him for anything. Not yet, he had told Marco. Keep watching, but keep your distance. Another week passed. Elena's early departures became more frequent. Her smiles seemed forced. Dark circles appeared under her eyes like she wasn't sleeping. Vincent found himself paying closer attention to her during her shifts. She moved through the house like a ghost, efficient and quiet. But there was tension in her shoulders now, a nervousness that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, while she was cleaning his study, he decided to test her. "Elena," he said, without looking up from his paperwork. She stopped dusting the bookshelf and turned toward him. "Yes, Mr. Marcelli? Everything all right at home?" The question hung in the air for just a moment too long. He saw her fingers tighten around the cleaning cloth, saw her chest rise and fall with a deeper breath. "Everything's fine, sir. Thank you for asking." But her voice had the slightest tremor, the kind most people wouldn't notice, the kind Vincent had learned to recognize as a lie. "Good," he said simply, returning to his papers. "Let me know if you need anything." She nodded and went back to dusting, but he could feel the change in the room. The air felt thicker. Her movements became more careful, more deliberate. That's when Vincent knew for certain something was wrong. The question was what, and whether it threatened him. 3 days later, on a Tuesday evening when the autumn air carried the first real bite of winter, Elena finished her work and headed for the door exactly 37 minutes early. Vincent made his choice. He grabbed his keys, slipped out the back entrance, and climbed into the black SUV he kept for situations that required invisibility. Tinted windows, quiet engine, nothing flashy. He had followed people before, rivals, business partners, men who owed him money, but never one of his household staff, never someone who seemed so genuinely innocent. As Elena walked down the long driveway toward the street, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Doubt. What if she really was just going home? What if he was wrong about the nervousness, the early departures, the dark circles under her eyes? What if he was about to cross a line he couldn't uncross? But then he remembered the tremor in her voice, the way she avoided eye contact when she lied about everything being fine. Vincent Marcelli hadn't survived in his world by ignoring his instincts. He followed her into the night, not knowing he was about to discover something that would shatter every assumption he had ever made about strength, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to protect the people you love. Elena's footsteps echoed through the empty streets as Vincent kept his distance, his SUV crawling silently behind her. The neighborhood grew worse with each block. Graffiti covered every surface. Streetlights flickered or didn't work at all. Windows were boarded up or covered with iron bars. This wasn't where he expected his maid to live. She turned down a narrow alley between 2 abandoned storefronts. Vincent parked at the mouth of the alley and continued on foot. His expensive Italian leather shoes crunched on broken glass and debris. The smell hit him immediately. Garbage, mold, and something else he couldn't identify. Elena disappeared through a side door of what looked like a condemned apartment building, the kind of place the city had forgotten existed. Vincent approached carefully. Through a cracked window, he could see a dim hallway lit by a single bare bulb. Water stains covered the walls. The carpet was so old and dirty it looked black. He found the door Elena had used. It was slightly ajar. Inside he could hear voices. Soft, urgent. Vincent had spent decades learning to move without sound. He slipped through the door and up a staircase that creaked with every step. The voices grew clearer as he climbed. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. He stopped outside apartment 3C. The door was thin enough that he could hear everything. Elena's voice, tired and strained. "I know, baby. I know you're hungry. Mommy brought dinner. A child's voice, weak and raspy. Is it good food this time? It's from the big house where Mommy works. The man who lives there eats very well. Vincent pressed closer to the door. Through a gap in the frame, he could see inside. The apartment was smaller than his walk-in closet. One room, no separate bedroom, no separate kitchen. Just four walls, a tiny window, and barely enough space for the essentials. Elena knelt on the floor next to a mattress where a little boy lay covered in blankets. He looked about 6 years old, maybe 7. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Even from the hallway, Vincent could hear the wheeze in his lungs. Elena opened the paper bag she'd been carrying. Vincent recognized the containers inside. They were from his kitchen, leftovers from meals his personal chef had prepared. She pulled out a small portion of pasta, some bread, and what looked like part of a chicken breast. Food that would have been thrown away at his house was a feast here. Eat slowly, she whispered to the boy. Make it last. The child tried to sit up but started coughing violently. Elena supported him with one arm while holding a plastic cup of water with the other. The coughing fit went on for almost a minute. When it finally stopped, the boy was exhausted. Elena helped him lie back down and pulled the blankets up to his chin. Mommy has to work extra tomorrow, she said softly. Mrs. Patterson next door will check on you, but I need you to rest, okay? Take your medicine when she brings it. Vincent's eyes adjusted to the darkness inside the apartment. On a small table next to the mattress, he could see medicine bottles, several of them, the kind that cost hundreds of dollars even with insurance, the kind most people couldn't afford. Elena kissed the boy's forehead and stood up. She walked to the tiny window and looked out at the street below. In the dim light filtering through the glass, Vincent could see tears running down her face. She wiped them away quickly and returned to her son. Tell me the story again, the boy whispered. Elena sat on the edge of the mattress and smoothed his hair. Which story? The one about the castle. Vincent watched as Elena's face softened. For the first time since he'd started following her, she looked peaceful. Once upon a time, she began, there was a beautiful castle on a hill. It had marble floors that sparkled like diamonds and paintings that looked like windows to other worlds. The people who lived there ate food fit for kings and slept in beds softer than clouds. The boy's eyes closed as he listened. And one day, Elena continued, a little prince lived in that castle. He was brave and strong and kind. He never got sick, and he never went hungry, and he had everything his heart desired. Vincent felt something twist in his chest. She was describing his house, his life, but through her eyes it wasn't. Just wealth and power. It was a fairy tale. Will I ever see the castle, Mommy? Elena's voice broke slightly. Maybe someday, baby. Maybe someday we'll visit the castle together. The boy smiled and drifted off to sleep. Elena sat there for a long moment, watching him breathe. Then she stood up and began moving around the small apartment. She checked the locks on the door. She counted the money in a coffee can on the counter. She looked through the medicine bottles, reading labels and checking dates. Vincent had seen enough. He backed away from the door as quietly as he had approached. But as he reached the staircase, he heard Elena's voice again. She was crying now, really crying. The kind of broken sobs that come from someone who has been holding everything together for too long. I'm so sorry, she whispered to her sleeping son. I'm so sorry I can't give you more. I'm trying so hard, but it's never enough. Vincent stopped on the stairs. His hand gripped the railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. In his world, weakness got you killed. Emotion was a liability. Caring about anything too much gave your enemies a weapon to use against you. But standing in that crumbling stairwell, listening to a young mother apologize to her sick child for not being able to afford a better life, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in 20 years. Shame. He thought about his mansion with its empty rooms and expensive furniture. He thought about the food his chef threw away every night. He thought about the money he spent on things he didn't need while Elena counted coins to buy medicine for her son. He thought about how she smiled at him every morning despite everything she was going through, how she never complained, never asked for help, never showed even a hint of the pain she was carrying. Vincent made it back to his SUV without being seen. He sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes, staring at the building where Elena and her son lived. For the first time in decades, Vincent Marcelli didn't know what to do next. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Everything was about to change. About to change. The drive back to the mansion felt like the longest journey of Vincent's life. Every red light, every turn, every mile stretched endlessly as images of that tiny apartment burned themselves into his memory. The boy's labored breathing, Elena's whispered apologies, the medicine bottles that cost more than most people made in a week. By the time he pulled through his own gates, the contrast felt obscene. Motion sensors triggered lights that illuminated perfectly trimmed hedges. The circular driveway led to a front entrance that could house 3 families. Marble columns reached toward the sky like monuments to excess. Vincent sat in his car for 20 minutes after parking, staring at the fountain in his courtyard. The water danced under spotlights, a display that probably cost more to run each month than Elena paid in rent. He finally went inside, but the house felt different now. Every room seemed too large, every piece of furniture too expensive, every painting on the wall too indulgent. In his study, Vincent poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and stood by the window overlooking his grounds. The security lights created pools of brightness across the lawn, each one representing a monthly salary for someone like Elena. Sleep didn't come that night. Vincent lay in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation he'd ever had with Elena. Her quiet thank you when he'd given the staff Christmas bonuses. Her genuine concern when he'd mentioned having a headache. The way she never looked at him with fear, even though everyone else did. She had never seen him as a dangerous man. She had seen him as the owner of a fairy tale castle. The next morning, Vincent arrived at breakfast to find Elena already at work. She moved through the dining room with her usual efficiency, straightening chairs and wiping down surfaces that were already spotless. "Good morning, Mr. Marcelli," she said with that same warm smile. But now Vincent could see what he'd missed before, the slight tremor in her hands, the way she moved a little slower than usual, the dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Elena," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "Sit down for a moment." She paused, clearly surprised by the request. "Is something wrong, sir?" "Nothing's wrong. I just want to talk." Elena glanced around nervously, as if sitting in his presence might break some unspoken rule. Finally, she perched on the edge of a chair across from him. Vincent studied her face. Up close, he could see the exhaustion she'd been hiding, the stress lines around her eyes, the weight of responsibility that someone her age should never have to carry alone. "How long have you been taking care of your son by yourself?" he asked quietly. The question hit Elena like a physical blow. Her face went pale, and her hands clenched together in her lap. "I don't understand what you mean," she whispered. "Elena," Vincent's voice was gentle but firm. "I know about your son. I know about the apartment. I know about the medicine." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then her shoulders began to shake, and tears started streaming down her face. "Please don't fire me," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I know I've been leaving early, but I make up the time. I work through lunch. I never take breaks. Please, I need this job. He needs me to have this job." Vincent felt that same twist in his chest he'd experienced the night before. "I'm not going to fire you." Elena looked up at him, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. "Tell me about him," Vincent said. "Tell me about your son." The story came out in broken pieces. Elena's boyfriend had disappeared when she got pregnant. Her parents had disowned her for refusing to give the baby up for adoption. She'd worked 3 jobs while going to night school, trying to build a better life. Then her son got sick. "The doctors say it's asthma, but it's complicated," Elena explained, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "He needs special medications, breathing treatments, regular checkups with specialists. The insurance I get from working here covers some of it, but not everything. Not nearly everything. Vincent listened without interrupting as she described nights spent in emergency rooms, choosing between medicine and food, watching her son struggle to breathe while she felt helpless to fix it. I've been taking the leftover food because I can't afford groceries and his medicine in the same week, she continued. I know it's stealing, and I know you could have me arrested, but I didn't know what else to do. He's only 7 years old, and he's been so sick, and I just wanted to make sure he had something to eat. It's not stealing, Vincent said firmly. That food would have been thrown away anyway. Elena looked at him with confusion. But it belongs to you, and now I'm giving it to you. Officially. For the first time since she'd started talking, Elena managed a small smile, but it faded quickly. That's very kind of you, Mr. Marcelli, but it doesn't solve the real problem. The medicine, the doctor visits, the rent on that apartment. I'm drowning, and I don't know how to save us both. Vincent stood up and walked to the window. Outside, his gardeners were trimming hedges that didn't need trimming, maintaining perfection that no one but him would ever see. What if I told you there was a solution? He said, turning back to Elena. She looked up at him with desperate hope. What do you mean? What if I told you that you and your son could live here? In the house? Elena's mouth dropped open. I don't understand. Vincent had made the decision in that moment, but it felt like something he'd been considering his entire life. There are 12 bedrooms in this house. 11 of them are empty. There's a full medical facility in the basement that I had installed for emergencies. There's a private doctor on call 24 hours a day. Mr. Marcelli, I couldn't possibly. Your son needs specialized care. I can provide that. You need stability and security. I can provide that too. Elena shook her head, tears flowing freely now. Why would you do this for us? I'm nobody. I'm just the maid. Vincent walked back to the table and sat down across from her. For the first time in 20 years, he let someone see past the mask he wore every day. Because you've shown me something I forgot existed, he said quietly. You've shown me what it looks like to love someone more than yourself, to sacrifice everything for another person without expecting anything in return, to be genuinely good in a world that rewards cruelty. Elena stared at him, speechless. Because in 2 years of working in my house, surrounded by more wealth than most people see in a lifetime, you never asked me for anything. Not once. Not even when your child was sick and you were desperate. Vincent paused, his voice growing softer. Because you look at this place and see a fairy tale castle, not the fortress of a dangerous man. Because you've treated me with kindness when everyone else treats me with fear. Because you've made me remember that there's more to life than power and control and always watching your back. Elena was crying openly now, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. I can't accept charity, she whispered. It's not charity, it's family. The word hung in the air between them. Vincent realized it was the first time he'd used that word to describe anything other than his criminal organization in over a decade. Bring your son here today, Vincent continued. Let my doctor examine him. Let him sleep in a real bed tonight. Let him eat a proper meal. Let him be a child instead of a patient. Elena covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. I don't know what to say. Say yes. She looked up at him through her tears. Yes. Vincent smiled, and it was the first genuine smile he'd worn in years. Neither of them knew it yet. But that single word would transform everything. The house that had been a fortress would become a home. The man who had built his life on fear would learn to build it on love. And a little boy who had only known struggle would discover what it felt like to be truly safe. But first, there was a child to save. And Vincent Marcelli, who had never failed at anything that truly mattered to him, wasn't about to start now. Now. Vincent called his personal physician within the hour. Dr. Harrison had been treating the Marcelli family for 15 years, asking no questions and keeping every secret. But when Vincent explained the situation, even the usually stoic doctor sounded surprised. You want me to examine a child? Here? Today? His name is Alex. He's 7 years old. He has severe asthma and hasn't been getting proper treatment. I want a full workup, and I want to know exactly what he needs to get better. Vincent, I'm not a pediatric specialist. If this child is as sick as you describe, he needs someone with more expertise in... Then bring someone with expertise. Bring whoever you need to bring. Money is no object. Dr. Harrison paused. In all their years together, Vincent had never shown interest in helping anyone outside his immediate circle. Is this child related to you somehow? Vincent looked across the room at Elena, who was still sitting at his dining table, staring at her hands in disbelief. He will be. By noon, Elena had returned to the apartment with Vincent's driver and 2 of his most trusted men. Not for protection, but to help move what little they owned. When they arrived at the building, Vincent was already there, standing in that cramped hallway, seeing the place in full daylight for the first time. Somehow, it looked even worse than it had the night before. Alex was awake when his mother walked through the door with 3 strangers behind her. The boy looked exactly as Vincent had imagined, fragile, pale, but with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Mommy?" Alex's voice was barely a whisper. "Who are these people?" Elena knelt beside his mattress and took his small hand in hers. "Baby, I want you to meet someone very special. This is Mr. Marcelli. He's the man who lives in the castle I told you about." Alex's eyes widened as he looked at Vincent. Despite everything, despite being sick and scared and confused, the boy smiled. The real castle? With the marble floors? Vincent found himself crouching down to Alex's level, something he'd never done with any child before. "That's right, and I was wondering if you and your mother would like to come stay there for a while." "Forever?" Alex asked, his voice filled with hope. Vincent glanced at Elena, who nodded through fresh tears. Forever. The move took less than an hour. Everything Elena and Alex owned fit into 2 cardboard boxes and a duffel bag. As they prepared to leave, Alex insisted on walking out on his own, even though each step seemed to exhaust him. "I'm brave," he told Vincent, his small hand gripping the railing as they descended the stairs. "Mommy says brave boys don't let anyone carry them." Vincent wanted to scoop the child up and spare him the struggle, but he understood. Alex had been fighting his whole life. Taking away his dignity wasn't kindness. The ride to the mansion was quiet. Alex pressed his face to the window, watching the neighborhoods change from run-down to middle-class to wealthy. When they finally passed through Vincent's gates, the boy gasped. "It's bigger than I imagined," he whispered. Elena chose a bedroom on the 2nd floor, close to Vincent's master suite, but with its own sitting area and bathroom. The room was larger than their entire apartment had been. Alex ran from corner to corner, his wheezing forgotten in his excitement. "Mommy, look! There's a television! And books! And the bed is so big!" But when Dr. Harrison arrived with a pediatric pulmonologist, Alex became quiet and suspicious. He'd spent too much time in hospitals and clinics to trust doctors easily. "I don't want any shots," he told Vincent, hiding behind his mother. "How about this?" Vincent said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What if I stay here with you while the doctors check you out? And if they need to give you any medicine, they have to explain to both of us exactly why you need it." Alex considered this. "You'll make sure they don't hurt me? I promise." The examination took 2 hours. Vincent watched as the specialists listened to Alex's lungs, took blood samples, and ran tests he'd never heard of. The boy was braver than most grown men Vincent knew, only crying once when they had to insert an IV for the blood work. When it was over, Dr. Harrison and the specialist, Dr. Chen, asked to speak with Vincent and Elena privately. "The good news is that Alex's condition is very treatable," Dr. Chen began. "The bad news is that he's been severely undertreated for years. His lungs show significant inflammation, and he's developed some complications that could have been prevented with proper medication." Elena's face crumpled. "I did the best I could with what I had." "You did amazingly," Dr. Chen said gently. "But Alex needs a comprehensive treatment plan. Daily medications, regular breathing treatments, environmental controls, and close monitoring. Without insurance complications and cost considerations, we can get him back to being a normal 7-year-old. What does that mean exactly? Vincent asked. Dr. Chen pulled out a tablet and showed them Alex's x-rays. We're talking about a complete overhaul of his treatment. New medications that cost about $800 a month. A nebulizer system for the house. Air purifiers for his room. Regular checkups every 2 weeks initially, then monthly. And if he has a severe attack, immediate access to emergency care. Vincent didn't even blink at the numbers. What else? Physical therapy to help strengthen his respiratory system. Nutritional counseling to make sure he's getting what he needs to fight infections. And honestly, the biggest thing will be reducing his stress levels. Sick children who live in unstable situations often have worse symptoms because anxiety triggers asthma attacks. Elena was quiet for a long moment. How long before we see improvement? If we start the new treatment plan today, you should notice a difference within a week. Within a month, he should be breathing easier than he has in years. That evening, Vincent found Alex in the mansion's library, a room the boy had discovered on his own. He was sitting in a chair meant for adults, his feet dangling several inches from the floor, slowly turning the pages of a picture book about dragons. Finding anything interesting? Vincent asked. Alex looked up. I can't read all the words yet, but the pictures are beautiful. I've never seen so many books in one place. Vincent pulled up a smaller chair next to him. Would you like me to read to you? Alex nodded eagerly, and Vincent began reading about brave knights and magical kingdoms. But as he read, he realized something profound had shifted inside him. For decades, he had built walls to keep the world out. Tonight, he was reading bedtime stories to a sick child who saw him not as a dangerous criminal, but as the kind man who lived in a castle. 6 months later, Alex was running through the mansion's gardens, his laughter echoing off the marble walls. His breathing was clear, his cheeks had color, and he called Vincent Papa Vincent without any prompting from his mother. Elena had become more than just a maid. She had become the heart of a home that had been nothing but a fortress for far too long. Vincent's empire still existed, but it operated differently now. The man who once ruled through fear had learned to lead through something far more powerful. He established medical clinics in underserved neighborhoods. He funded scholarships for single mothers. He quietly paid hospital bills for families who couldn't afford treatment. His associates noticed the change, but none dared question it. Vincent Marcelli was still the most dangerous man in the city. He just happened to be dangerous in defense of different things now. Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen not when we gain something, but when we finally see what was already there. Vincent thought he was following a thief that night. Instead, he discovered that the greatest treasures aren't kept in safes or hidden in secret accounts. They're found in the quiet courage of a mother who would do anything for her child, in the trust of a little boy who believes in fairy tales, in the realization that a house only becomes a home when it shelters the people who matter most. The mansion doors still close each evening, but now they close on a family. And Vincent Marcelli, who spent his life taking from the world, finally learned the joy of giving back.